They are trying to tell parents that you don't have the right to opt your child out of LGBTQIA+. And we know what the plus is for. The plus is for pedophilia. This book is available for kids ages 4 and up. It says from the time she was 2 years old, Jazz knew that she had a girl's brain in a boy's body. Sparkle boy. Every dad wants his son to be a sparkle boy.
This is grooming, John. This is grooming. Like, I have a 4-year-old. I know how impressionable kids are.
This is mental. That's what it is. I call it mental because it assaults the soul, it stains the brain, and it robs children of their innocence. It's Amanchukwu, and it means I know God. That's what it means. And for you to have a policy that says that in this meeting you're against vulgarity, then that means this board is a hypocrite if you endorse books like this to be in the school system. They can't make me leave. I have freedom of speech.
Yes, you do.
And you are supposed to uphold that.
I think there's men and women that are ignorant of our educational system. They're still thinking that this is like when I went to school.
If they think that a 14-year-old should be reading this in school, we have a serious problem.
Are there any other books that are out there?
There are hundreds and hundreds.
God never intended for the church to be hid in a corner. That's not what God called us to do. We're supposed to occupy until he comes, but we do that standing. If you pervert the hearts and the minds of kids in this district, you will reap it. I'm disgusted. What a shame you all are.
How do you define leftist indoctrination?
A communist movement just at the heart. It's about dividing society, dividing parents from children, male and female, whatever the case may be. And once you're educated, then you can fight it.
Your time's up.
My time is not up. I'm not leaving. You want to know why I'm not leaving? Because I came too far to defend these children in this district.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you have not been moved by that documentary called 22 Words by John Amanchukwu, I don't know what, your spirit ain't working or something. But I wanted to invite John because we need to have this conversation. John, you go all around the country exposing exactly what we saw in that trailer of the documentary that you created, exposing the hypocrisy and the foolery and the evilness that they're thrusting on to our children. So let's talk about this. The Supreme Court, I think is Mahmood. I'm probably saying it wrong. Mahmood Taylor is a Supreme Court case that's out right now. And I'm telling you, you're on the front lines of trying to make sure that this doesn't get a yes vote where they ban, or at least it doesn't get the vote where they ban parents from having access to opting out in these schools with the pornography and all kind of the stuff that they're pushing. So what are your thoughts on that, John, and your efforts in trying to help these schools and parents are struggling?
Well, you know, Brandon, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me on. This situation that we're contending with is not a new problem. This is an old problem. What we're seeing play out before our eyes right now is a concerted effort between Marxist atheists who wanted to deconstruct America and to topple Christianity and the Christian faith. This is why we celebrate the efforts of President Donald J. Trump in creating a anti-Christian bigotry task force under Pam Bondi. You know, oftentimes we hear about anti-Semitism, and we should fight against that because it's racist to be racist, and it's wrong to be racist. But we don't hear many people talking about the Christian bigotry that's taking place in our country. And that's what this case is primarily. They are trying to tell parents that you don't have the right to opt your child out of LGBTQIA+, and we know what the plus is for. The plus is for pedophilia, all right? It gives the access for people who are demented to now exercise what is called their superfluity of naughtiness, their lasciviousness out on children. I've now traveled to 19 states addressing this issue, and I'm going to 16 states this year. And there are people out there, Brandon, who would tell you this issue isn't real, it's fake, and what the book banning pastor, that's what the liberal media calls me, he's lying. It's a farce. You know, this is rage bait. This is clickbait. Well, here's a book right here. It's entitled I Am Jazz. When you open up the jacket of this book, and keep in mind, this book is available for kids ages 4 and up. All right. This is what the jacket says. It says, from the time she was 2 years old, Jazz knew that she had a girl's brain in a boy's body. Now, if that isn't demonic and diabolical, what is? That's one book. Then here's another one entitled Sparkle Boy. You know, every dad wants his son to be a sparkle boy, you know, to be a ballerina and to twirl around. That's what every dad wants out of his son. Of course not. When you open the jacket of this book says Casey loves to play with his blocks, puzzles, and dump truck, and he also loves things that shimmer, glitter, and sparkle. Casey's older sister, Jessie, thinks this is weird. Shimmery, glittery, sparkly things are only for girls, right? When Casey and Jessie head to the library for story time, Casey proudly wears his shimmery skirt and sparkly bracelet. His nails glitter in the light. Jessie insists that Casey looks silly. It's one thing to dress like this around the house, but going outside as a sparkle boy is another thing entirely. This book is for kids ages 4 and up.
Bro, this is grooming.
It is
101. This is grooming, John. This is grooming. Like,
Indeed.
I have a 4-year-old. I know how impressionable kids are.
Mm-hmm.
And they're introducing these concepts that are completely false to the minds of impressionable young people. Bro, it's crazy.
It is, and it's all intentional. And what I'm doing is I'm bringing the receipts today. You know, we oftentimes hear that this is not a real issue. Well, I'll show you. You know, here's another book. You know, this is for kids ages 13 and up. It's entitled Let's Talk About It, The Teen's Guide to Sex, Relationships, and Being a Human. Now, when you open up this book, the author puts forth a disclaimer. Erica Moan and Matthew Nolan are the authors. This is what the authors say. The authors and publisher expressly disclaim responsibility for any adverse effects that may result from the use or application of the information contained in this book. In other words, if you do the raunchy things that we're going to talk about in this book, you're on your own. All right. If you are willing to go as far as insert sex toys into exits, all right. I want to keep this sanitized for your audience. I'm trying to work with you today.
Hey, I know we all know it. You can't go down a one-way street. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. And so on page 119, it teaches kids how to do that, but in depth. It trains them on how to find the right spot.
That is insane.
And so this is what's in our books. And also on page 117, it shows girls not just a picture of a vagina, but it shows them how to properly touch it and to stimulate it so that you can have an orgasm. Man, this stuff right here, you know, we call it grooming, and that's appropriate. You know, that's appropriate terminology. We call it indoctrination. That's appropriate as well. But what I've been doing lately, I've been changing the rhetoric and becoming more inflammatory in how we depict it. Okay, this is mental. That's what it is. I call it mental rape because it assaults the soul, it stains the brain, and it robs children of their innocence. When a child sees this for the first time and they open this book and they see the images, this is going to sodomize their minds. It's going to scramble the egg. You know, when you crack an egg, you drop it, put it in the fry pan or on the ground. After that, it's done. It's done. You can't undo what you just did. And when a child sees this, it follows them for ages. Just keep in mind, not too long ago, I was flying to Texas, and there was a male flight attendant, and I could tell that he was in that other lifestyle. But I tried to be professional, be kind towards him, because I love all people, and Jesus Christ saves us all, regardless of what your sin is. You know, he's redeemed me and saved me from sin too, and so I get it. And so I didn't want to be brash or flippant towards the guy, but he loved talking to Brother John. All right, and so while having dialogue with him, he wanted to know where I was headed and what I was doing. And I generally don't like talking about what I do because it may rub some people the wrong way. He didn't know that I was on my way to a school board meeting to talk about this stuff, and I was getting ready to lay some perverts out. So I don't want to talk about that. I'm asleep on the plane, right? I'm trying to enjoy to get to where I have to go so I can get back to my family, okay? But he kept wanting to talk, and so I tried to, you know, change the conversation. But then we land, we get to where we're going. I finally tell him what I'm doing and things of that nature, you know, after he already served me my breakfast, because I don't want him to put nothing in my cup and in my food as I'm telling him what I'm doing. I'm thinking about all these things, man, at 6 a.m. And so I stopped by McDonald's because the food on the plane is not always good. You know what I mean? And first class is nice, but the food is not always great. So I stopped by McDonald's. He comes by there as well, and so we're still talking. All right, and so I'm like, okay, I'm a minister to this. I'm going to minister to this guy, and I say to him, I say, hey, you know what, man? When did you first find out that you were homosexual? He said, you know what, man? You're the first person to ever ask me that. He paused and said, you know what, you're the first person to ever ask me that. He said, you know what, it was when I was 9 and I was watching a pornographic movie. And for some reason or another, I was more attracted to the men than the women. And see, this stuff cuts deep. And from there, man, I prayed for him, I ministered to him, poured into him, empowered him, encouraged him, and told him, man, that God called him to be a father. You know, God's future and destiny for you is to be a father, to be a patriarch, to be a husband, to be a person who can replenish the earth, be fruitful and multiply, according to Genesis 1:27 and 1:28. That's God's destiny for you. But at 9, he saw something that he should have never seen. And, you know, the human brain doesn't fully develop until the age of 25. And he didn't comprehend the fullness of what he was seeing. It could be that he identified more with the male because he had never seen a woman like that other than looking at mommy, possibly. You know what I mean? But naturally, you know, there's no affection there between, you know, a son looking at his mama like that or a son looking at his dad like that naked. You know what I mean? It's one level. But it could be that he was more attracted to that because that's what he has. And so therefore he was left with a warped mindset of what he should be attracted to, you know? Now, as you age and you get up to puberty, you know what I mean? The mind begins to change. And your thought process towards things, you know, you become more understanding and knowledgeable of the opposite sex. But that situation right there told me a lot. It told me further that these books that are in the school system all around the country, it's the reason why nearly 18 to 20% of Generation Z identifies as LGBTQ.
Bro, that's the stuff that you're saying is just mind-boggling to me. And I know that it happens because a lot of people that I know that identify a certain way, they speak of a point in time in their life where they were abused.
Yes.
One of my good friends, he's a pastor. Well, we're not as close as we used to be because he still live in Tucson. I live here, but we were really close at one point. And he's a pastor, and he struggles with the homosexual lifestyle. Like literally, he doesn't live it, right? But he had a past, and he's trying to fight against it, right? He date women, but he still struggles but he's pursuing to do it the right thing by God, right? And he's a pastor. And he used to tell me this stuff. Of course, he didn't want to tell the congregation, but you know when you see somebody that's struggling, you know what I'm saying? You like, yeah, you know, you got a little sugar in the tank.
Right.
But he told me what happened to him is that he got abused by his older male cousin. And his older male cousin was the first intimate experience that he had. And that intimate experience is all he knew.
Wow.
So growing up as a man, intimacy was connected to the experience that he had with a man. And I promise you, John, and this is why what you do is so important. The impressionable minds of young people is where it starts.
That's right.
Like young people that get exposed to stuff too early. And John, this goes with the LGBTQ side or even the straight side, but with the people that are, you know, sexually active.
Sure.
You're watching this stuff or getting exposed to sexuality, watching kissing and the soft stuff on television.
That's right.
And then you go to the, you know, back when we were young, you go to the tapes under the bed or something and you pop them in the VCR and try to rewind it back to where you thought it was supposed to be at. You know what I'm saying? So you had the tapes that people would watch and get exposed to hardcore stuff. And
That's
what
right.
does that do? As a kid, you may not automatically begin to endeavor into that, but in your subconscious mind, those images that you saw will manifest themselves at some point in your life.
Right.
And this is why this case is so important, that the Supreme Court needs to rule correctly. And what is your thoughts on that, John? Like, do you think that because Trump is in office, most of the Supreme Court justices are conservative? Are we going to get a victory here, man? Because if they do allow for these schools to just continue to perpetuate this ideology without allowing parents to opt out, we're going to be, in 20 years, half of the population is going to be trans or gay or something in the alphabet spectrum.
Well, you know, Brandon, let's juxtapose the cases. Consider the 1962 Ingle v. Vitale court case, where a wicked woman by the name of Madeleine Murray O'Hare lobbied to have prayer removed from the public school system. There was a simple non-denominational, non-proselytizing prayer that was in the school system during that time frame. The prayer says, "Almighty God, we acknowledge our dependence upon thee, and we beg thy blessings upon us, our parents, our teachers, and our country." The Supreme Court ruled 8-1 to support the removal of school-sponsored prayer. During that time frame, 0 Christian organizations came forward to bring a brief to stop it. The church was silent then, and the church is silent today, hence the documentary 22 Words. That's where that comes from. It comes from that school-sponsored prayer. Now, she wanted to initially have her son opt out, Madeleine Murray O'Hare, of school-sponsored prayer. That was an option, okay? But over time, because she was a Marxist atheist and she was hell-bent on her communistic views, that wasn't enough for her. She wanted removed altogether. And so I juxtapose that to this current court case where we're trying to give parents the opportunity to opt out. Are they going to side with the parents? I don't know. But the fact that this has had to go all the way to the Supreme Court tells us that there are diabolical people in power in this country who want us to worship the sacred cow of the LGBTQIA plus agenda. Do I think that parents should have the right to opt out? Of course. But listen to what Ketanji Brown Jackson said. Ketanji said during this court case that if parents don't want to have this kind of content taught to their children, they should find another situation. Translated, kick rocks, go find another school. And this is the same woman who was selected for 2 reasons that an individual should not be used. Well, let me say it this way. She was selected for 2 reasons that should not be the criteria for a person who was selected for the Supreme Court. She was selected for being a Black female, okay? And then when it came time to be able to define what a woman was, she couldn't do that. She didn't know when life began, all that stuff. And now she's telling parents that hey, if you want to opt out, go find another situation. Well, how does that work for Black parents in America? By and large, many of which who don't have the necessary funding and resources to go to a private school. My children are blessed to go to a private school. I would like to believe that your children are blessed to go to a private school. But the majority of Blacks in this country don't have the resources to do so. You know, in the 1960s, Blacks were locked out of the public school system. And today they're trapped in. While at the same time, many of your white liberal school board leaders and superintendents and politicians and presidents, they campaign on, no, we don't want to create competition in the marketplace when it comes to education. Every child should be forced to go to a public school, and you shouldn't be able to receive your funding to go to a school of any choice. And so what we're seeing right now with this court case is a great deal of hypocrisy. You want to force the parents to remain in the public school system, force them to indoctrinate their children, groom their children, and mentally rape their children. And then if you push back against it, you're oftentimes doxxed, or you're in a category of where Merrick Garland called parents domestic terrorists. And so what's a parent to do? And so my mission in this season is to arm parents likewise, and to raise up the voices of parents out there who are disgruntled and desire proper training and development and pedagogy on how to fight against these issues. Brandon, there are 3 types of people when it comes to mental rape. You have punks, you have perverts, and you have protectors. You see, the punks are represented in Revelations 21, verse 8, where the Bible references 8 reasons why people will be thrown into the lake of fire. The first reason is for being a coward. Okay, so if you are a coward, God says you're going to hell. Punks go to hell, okay? Really. And then the other reason is for being a pervert. And these are the people who have gone through damaging situations, or who have lustful intentions, who now want to apply that to a child. And then you have the protectors. And these are the people like me and like you who use your voice at school board meetings, on college campuses. We saw what happened to you recently as Antifa and the mob tried to accost you and fight you and tear down your tent and seek to fight against you. We all saw that took place. So we're currently in a situation right now where we need more voices. We need more voices. The mama bears have done their job for a long time, but it's now time for men to rise up in the culture and to speak truth to power. You know, it was C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis made it plain when he said this in his book, The Abolition of Man. He said, "We make men without chests and expect from them virtue and enterprise. We laugh at honor and are shocked to find traitors in our midst." And so we have a bunch of chestless men out there, men who are afraid to speak up. And if there's any voice that has represented to the nth degree what it looks like to be a coward, it's the voice of preachers. You know,
100%.
Preachers.
I'm glad you said that, John. I'm glad you said it, because it's the men in the churches.
Yes.
There is like, you can't find a spiritual leader outside of the church you go to, your pastor, you guys are standing on principle. You can rarely find a pastor who is mainstream and popular on social media address these issues, brother. Right. And they should be the first to address. It should not be the average status quo. It shouldn't just be parents. Preachers, pastors, clergymen should be in these meetings saying this is unacceptable. But let me tell you this, John. What happened is that we have attached the church to the 501c3 status, and people don't want to get on the blacklist, because if they get on the blacklist and the government or any of these left-leaning entities want to challenge them and challenge their 501c3 status, then they're going to lose the funding, the money, and they're not going to be able to have the big, beautiful facility. They don't care about the gospel of Jesus Christ. They don't care about being effective in the public square. They worry about their bottom line and keeping the lights on, and that's the biggest problem. And I know, John, you can speak to it because you are a pastor at a pretty prominent church. Yes. And it's why is it that pastors are too afraid to stand up like you're doing?
Well, I think first and foremost, many of these pastors don't have a biblical worldview. I believe it was George Barna who mentioned about 2 years ago that 37% of Christian pastors have a biblical worldview, and only 12% of teaching pastors have a biblical worldview, and only 13% of youth pastors have a biblical worldview. What is that? To have a biblical worldview, it means to gain your Christian ethic from the Word of God. Therefore, you see the world through the lenses of Scripture, and you determine what's right and what's wrong, what's good and what's evil, what's righteous and what's unrighteous, based upon what thus saith the Lord. And that's it. And so that is the problem with the culture, and amongst pastors. They don't have a biblical worldview. And then many of them are afraid of their more liberal leaning members, because look at the political landscape. Democrats give far more money, much more money than many of your Republican donors. Okay. And so your Republican donors are not able to give at the same level as your Democrat donors. If you're running a campaign today and you're running for Congress, they're going to outraise you 10-1. But many pastors don't want to tick off, ruffle the feathers of, or cause their more liberal members to become angry. They don't. And so they don't want to address the sin issues, the cultural issues, the LGBT issues, the abortion issue. They don't want to talk about border security. They don't want to talk about these things because it's going to rub them the wrong way. And so what we're seeing right now is a constant shift of the Christian church away from pastors seeing their role as being one of a watchman to simply just being a watcher, right? And so the watchman's role was to see what was going on as they gazed out over the nation, over a city, and to be able to determine even if a dust cloud was arising, because that dust cloud would tell the watchman that danger is coming because someone is coming through on a horse or a chariot. The Christian preacher must discern what's going on in the world to know even how he should lead his church. But today, the watchmen are just watching, but they're not speaking. And so God has called us to do more than just see what's going on. He wants us to weigh in on what's going on. And so I say this now more than ever, that we can't lose our bark. We can't lose our voice. We can't take away the teeth of the gospel. It's imperative that preachers be concerned about the health of our country to the point that they're willing to even practice peaceful civil disobedience. And that's what I've done at many school board meetings around this country. I've even been handcuffed for fighting against this stuff. They put me in handcuffs. I've never been in handcuffs in my life, not even on my honeymoon or even on Valentine's Day. Ain't nobody putting me in no bondage position. You ain't putting me in no handcuffs, but I was handcuffed at a school board meeting. And let me tell you something, those handcuffs hurt. you know what I mean? And they put it, Officer Tatum, they put those cuffs behind my back. Man, I felt like I couldn't breathe, man. I was standing up and couldn't breathe. No one had their knee on my neck. I was standing up and couldn't breathe. And for 15 minutes, I was detained, in handcuffs, solely because I was fighting against the pornographic books and an issue that took place with a young girl who was forced to read from a pornographic short story in a class that she told the school board about, and they had done nothing about it. And so I think that now more than ever, peaceful civil disobedience is important.
Yeah, I agree. And people that are watching this, have to understand that you don't have to be a pastor, a clergyman. You don't have to have some type of a theological degree to step up and stand out when it comes to fighting for what's right in the eyes of Christ. We've all have been called. If you claim to be a Christian, you are called to do something. Some are called to preach. Some are called to serve, the preacher or whatever position you're in. You'll be an elder or whatever you do. When I first got saved, I was an usher. I was cleaning the bathrooms. I mean, whatever it is in the kingdom of God that need to get done, we are all supposed to be put into place to do something. There is no such thing as an inactive Christian. You're either a Christian or you're not a Christian. If you're inactive, you're not a Christian. You're not a believer. You're not following what Jesus said. Let me say this, John, because this is what makes me just incensed, is that everybody claimed to be a Christian, and everybody that claimed to be a Christian ain't a Christian. Everybody that's preaching the gospel, or they preaching and they using a book, they ain't a Christian. This is my thing. You may disagree because you've been in it longer than me when it comes to this pastor stuff. But bro, how do you have a relationship with God and you have tasted the goodness and you are afraid to stand? You don't have to fight nobody. Some people are afraid to just say something. I mean, they got the cross on their shirt. They got tattoos to say Jesus everywhere. But when they get in front of the secular culture, and you're saying, with the stats that you put out there, that they don't even have a biblical worldview. John, everything I do is based on what Christ told me to do. Now, of course, there's faults and there's things I got to pray about and I got to continue to work on. But every conceptual thing that I put forth in my life is perceived through the lens of saying, is this what God want me to do? Is this what God said do? Am I being a follower of Jesus Christ like I'm supposed to? Do I really love like I'm supposed to? It comes from the foundation of the gospel that Jesus put out there. How do you say you saved and you won't say nothing about these things? Mike Todd, Joel Osteen. I mean, I could go down the list of all these mega pastors. Only one outside of your church that I see that's mainstream. My friend Marcus Rogers, he talk about it all the time. But the one pastor that's getting pretty famous, the guy from New York, he's like 1916 church or 2816. Anthony
Philip Anthony Mitchell.
Philip Anthony Mitchell. You hear him talking about it, he going hard about it. You know what I mean? Yeah. But he's like the only like super mega famous internet pastor, like that's famous on the internet that's actually standing up.
Well, it's a common thing. And you talked about the 501c3 status. That's an issue. But it seems like as if the more liberal leaning pastors, they say what they want. They do what they want. But the more conservative leaning ones, they're afraid. They don't want to speak up. Or the ones who are independent, they're just neutral. They're just sitting in the seat of neutrality and they're apathetic. But keep in mind, 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 2 says, preach the word, be instant in season, out of season, reprove, rebuke, exhort with all long suffering and doctrine. Verse 3 says, for the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but after their own lust shall heap to themselves teachers having itching ears. Heap to themselves. They'll go find a preacher who will cut the prices to keep the people coming. They'll go find the preacher who will reduce the standard to make people happy. It's no longer about, the song used to say, oh, to be like Jesus. Oh, to be like Jesus, how I long to be like him. So meek and holy, so humble and lowly, how I love to be like him. No, we don't want to be like Jesus. We want to pattern ourselves after the culture and after the world. We want likes, we want followers, we want subscribers, we want to be famous, but we don't have many people who take the position of John the Baptist, who understood that he was the voice of one crying out in the wilderness, make straight the way of the Lord. And when Jesus came on the scene, John the Baptist said, my work is almost done. And he stood back. We need more John the Baptist. We need more preachers who understand that they're preaching in a desert. But instead, people don't want the glory to go to God. They want the glory to come to themselves. And so they are bowing at the altar of the Democrat Party. And now we even have some on the right bowing at the altar of the Republican Party. I think that we need a plumb line across the board, because a person saying that they are a Christian and a conservative is not enough. And a person saying that they are a Christian and a Democrat is not enough. What do you believe on the more critical and challenging issues of our day? And then also, when you look at what Timothy said in 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 1, it says, "This know also, that in the last days dangerous times shall come. For men shall be lovers of their own selves." Narcissism. Focus on me and no one else. It's the desire to put yourself above God, above family, and above your allegiance to the faith. It says, lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection. You know, it's unnatural for a 50-year-old man to look at a 16-year-old girl and say, I'm turned on by her. It's unnatural, but the Bible says it is going to happen. Truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasures. Man, some of these people love pleasure so much that they're willing to do anything that's going to make them feel good. Look at Shannon Sharp. 50 plus, but you're running around with an OnlyFans girl.
Yeah.
Where does that come from? Lovers of pleasure. That's what. Look at Diddy and this Diddy scandal and his freak offs with Cassie and all that stuff that he was doing. Diddy was dressing up as a Muslim woman and then going into the room and letting someone take someone else's body fluid and put it on his nipples. Lovers of pleasures. I mean,
but you know, you had some pastors.
Oh, you want to do that?
You had some rappers, some Christian rappers.
Come on,
say they at the Diddy party.
At the party. You know what I mean? And now they're resigning and stepping down and giving the church to their daughter. you know what I mean? And her husband, because, you know, these people in Dallas, Texas, you know, don't want nobody calling them out by name and don't want people to know what's been going on. That's a strategic move. What TD Jakes did by resigning and stepping down, that's a strategic move to protect his business, his entities, and his brand. There is no reason for a Christian pastor to be at a party like that. You know, it's unacceptable. These Christian artists, you know, it's
Lecrae. Lecrae went on his podcast. I watched it and described how he went to these parties. He went to a Diddy party, and then he went on and said, "This is what he said." And I'm not trying to make it about him, but like, this is the microcosm of this fake Christianity that people are putting out there because they love the world, the lovers of the world.
Yes.
He went on a podcast, said, "I went to Diddy parties and I ain't never seen nothing crazy." He goes on another one of his own podcasts and describes how he see men getting down heavy in the open area. He said he saw men on the couch getting it in.
Yeah.
Openly. So, bro, that sounds like a freak off.
Oh, it is.
That sounds like something crazy going on. You at a party and people are in the open doing deviant stuff. Men with men, though. He didn't say men and women. He said men on men. How do you spiritually accept the fact that you're at concerts, you know, Jesus this? Are you like TD Jakes or some of these other people that are standing before people and saying God is gonna do this and God and let me pray for you, and you have that same energy of Jesus and take that into a freak off. Like Diddy wasn't just Diddy 3 minutes ago. Diddy has been Diddy from the beginning. You listen to what he rap about, you listen to their lifestyle or their flashiness, you know, you have any wisdom, you know, people are doing drugs and all the sex in this industry. Why would you at any point of time associate yourself? John, you know that even this is in Psalms 1. I think not only the people that do it, no, this is in Romans 1:30 something, 28:30 something, where it says people doing all these things are worthy of death. Not only those who do them, but those who support those that do them, or you know what I'm saying, or give leeway to those that do them are also worthy of damnation.
That's right. That's Romans. You're right. Romans chapter 1, verse 32. It says, who knowing the judgment of God, that they which commit such things are worthy of death. You in the book, not only do the same, but have pleasure in them that do them.
Yeah, there you go.
That's exactly, you in the book, you're right. That's exactly what's taking place. And this is why, man, I was disturbed recently when Jamal Bryant brought David Johns on his podcast and was simping and telling David Johns that he felt like he was gay for a day. I mean, how can you say that? And then he dressed up on, I think it was Resurrection Sunday in a all pink suit. I mean, head to toe. I mean, looking like the Black Pink Panther. I mean, what do we do this at? And then goes on with Cam Newton and
talk about his legs
and tells Cam that his legs look like they've been lanolated. I had to look that word up. I mean, how you gonna tell the man your legs look lanolated? You know, it looks like it's oily and all this stuff, and told him he had pretty legs. I mean, just think about this. I'm married, been married for 17 years. You've been married longer than a decade, I believe.
Almost. We're close. We getting there.
Yeah. So you've been married long enough to know that there's some things that you just should not say. Okay. Especially looking at the opposite sex. You know, I'm not going to see a woman with pretty legs because I think that there are other women in this world who have pretty legs outside of my wife. That is true. And there are other men who have big muscles and six-pack abs beyond me. You know what I mean? And so she could probably see the same thing. But am I going to go on a show and tell a woman that she has pretty legs? And she might have pretty legs. Yeah. No, I'm not going to do that. Let alone, am I going to tell a dude with a full-on penis that he has pretty legs, and then stay there and talk about it for a while?
I mean, bro, he a pastor though. Like, if he was a comedian or something, he was joking about Cam's legs or something like that. It was weird anyway. But you a pastor, man. These pastors want to be like podcast superstars. Bro, there's a decorum that you have to have. The Bible also talks about not even, you're casting your pearls to swines, or not even having the appearance of evil. Don't let your good be evil spoken of.
Yes.
Like, don't, and I take those scriptural references to mean that don't be out here doing things to make you look bad or to make the gospel look bad. So you may see a man with some legs and you're like, oh, that guy got some nice legs, which is weird. But you have to have the decorum and the wisdom to say, I'm not going to say that, although I may be innocent in explaining it. I don't even want the presentation that I'm being weird. I don't even want people to question my commitment to Christ because I said or did this.
That's right.
And I'm telling you, John, a pastor has double the responsibility. And I'm saying every Christian should be thinking the same thing. We all, have to follow Christ. It's not like somebody got a different salvation than the other, but more is given, more is required.
Correct.
When you are in a position of authority,
that's right. You
can't be still struggling with, you can't have not overcome things that the layman is still dealing with. Like you got to step down, because you know this probably. Jamal had a few kids out of wedlock.
True.
He cheated on his wife, at least one, because I remember I used to listen to Jamal when I was in the church and I wasn't really conservative. I didn't know he's a big star
right.
when he was at Empowerment Temple or whatever that church was.
Yeah.
And he could preach. He know how to hoop.
Oh yeah.
He know how to play the heartstrings. He know how to sound articulate. He puts his messages together good for the unsuspecting. And I remember him cheating on his wife with a woman in the choir having a baby out of wedlock. He had a sermon, John. I will never forget it. I was sleeping. I was laying on the floor in my apartment in Tucson off Sunrise Drive, like this, listening to him on the floor. And he said he had a sermon called "I'm Still the Man." That's how he said. He's still the man. And his sermon was articulating, although that he messed up.
Right.
And John, it gets worse. He does the sermon. They play the organ. He hooping. And he finished his sermon, John, and he did like this. He dropped the mic and walked out the pulpit. And they cheered and they screamed. His sermon was about the fact that he cheated on his wife, but he's still the man.
Oh man.
You got it. That sermon probably out there. It was a good, like if you're young in Christ and you don't know how snake oil salesmen these people are, how much of a snake oil salesman, you would listen to that and be like, dang, he kind of put that together right there. Because he was pretty much saying like King David had messed up,
you
know, with Bathsheba, and
right.
but he was still a man after God's own heart. But this guy, you ain't King David, bro. You didn't take out Goliath. You're not really a man after God's own heart like David was. David was anointed to lead Israel. He was the king of Israel. You
That's
are
right.
a pastor at a church at the time, and I think it was Maryland. You ain't David, bro. Your affections for God ain't that serious like David's was. David was fighting lions and whatever he was fighting out there to protect the sheep, and he was the forgotten son, and they had came to him, and he was humble enough to take the responsibility, which came with a lot of weight, bro.
Right.
A whole nation under King David. You got a little fellowship, you know what I'm saying? And so you can't make that comparison. But people like him and others, who have a platform, and they rather talk on their podcast about homosexuality in a man's legs than to bring you on and talk pastor stuff about these books that are in school, this indoctrination of our young children getting sexualized, and they're gay and they're confused, and that's not who they are. And I'll tell you this, John, and I'll leave you with the last word. I don't know why every pastor in America don't use this one line that I heard a pastor say. They go, you claim that you've been born gay. You've been born trans. Okay, I get it. But the Bible has called you to be born again. So you may be born like that, but you need to be born again.
That's right.
You need to be renewed. You need to walk in the newness of life like Christ.
That's right.
You know, and so, but I want to leave it to you, John. Where can people find your documentary, 22 Words? How can they support you in this mission and that you're doing? How can they follow you? How can they be a part of the change that I feel like you're initiating?
Well, they can go to my website. It's iknowgod.us. The website is iknowgod.us. You can support me there. Also support my YouTube channel. It's John Amanchukwu at RevWu Truth, REVWU Truth, and you can follow me there on my YouTube channel. I have to say this, Brandon. Romans chapter 12, verses 1-2 tells us something. It says, I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. Verse 2 says, and be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed. The only trans is being transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. People need to be transformed, and that's what we're fighting to do.
Amen and amen. Thank you, John. And his last name is pronounced Amanchukwu. So some of y'all can't pronounce his last name. Did I get it right?
You got it right. You own it, man.
I knew. I've been practicing.